Welcome back to Faith and Fire. Today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about mothers. As we approach Mother's Day, I'm really reflecting on my role as a mother. And as I try to help my son grow in his faith and his spirituality, I really get clear on the importance of the role that I play in his life, as I also reflect on the role that my mother has played in my life and helping me come into my faith that I have today. So I wanted to sit down with a couple of my favorite people and talk about just that. What role do mothers play in the faith of the family, and how does that role play out, and has it changed over time? So I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves, and then we'll dive into the conversation. Miss Tracy.
Hi, Jess.
Hey, boo.
Tracy Lewis, and I am a mother of a 17, almost 18-year-old high school senior. Oh my God, he will be 18 this year.
Wow.
Jaden, and a 13-year-old 8th grader, Miles. And yes, the role of a mother has changed over time. Yes.
Okay. She said, let me put my stake in the ground right during
now.
The intros.
Let's knock it out now. Knock it out now.
That's funny.
My name is Kelvin Lewis. I am the husband to this lovely lady over here. And I also have 2 sons as well. And I'm just here for commentary and jokes and levity. So
we love witty commentary.
Yes.
Also, I love that you're here supporting, because I really want to hear your perspective on some of these things. I know how I feel as a single mother, but I don't really know the male perspective, right, of how they see the role of the mother. So I think we're going to have a great conversation.
And I think it's interesting because you have a son. So it is single mother raising a boy, right? And I know how I felt when I needed to stop going to the doctor appointments that you don't get to stop going to, right?
Wait, why do we stop? Mine's 14. So maybe mine's
when
not
did I
there
stop?
about
14?
13,
14. I was like, I can't go in the doctor's office
What's
anymore.
What's going to happen?
It just gets very awkward. And you find yourself going, I shouldn't be here anymore.
Is it like that one time that he and I sat down and watched the video about puberty on Amazon or on YouTube?
Except it's in real life.
And we looked at each other and we said, we're not going to do this again.
Yes. There will come a moment where you'll be in the doctor's office and you'll be like, I'm just going to go sit in the lobby with the other moms that are there.
This is my cue.
This is my cue. And then you go sit next to the other moms and they're like, your son is? And you're like, yep, can't do it. But it just dawned on me that you don't have that. And I've always not struggled, but like have this heart for single moms, especially single moms of boys. Because it is boys are hard. I don't care what anybody says. Dressing them is easy. Raising them is hard.
So the nice thing is his dad is like super active. So we're just not partners, he and I. Actually, his wife and I are more partners than anything else.
All of this.
We go around places and I'm like, this is why people think we're a lesbian couple. You have to stop introducing like, oh, I'm his mom. Oh, I'm his mom too. And they're like, oh, that's so nice for you.
Cute.
Oh, yes.
You're progressive.
That's exactly the look we get. It's like, oh, how progressive. And then I have to say, oh yeah, his dad, because he doesn't go anywhere with us. So it's just me, her, and 3 kids.
And all the things.
So, I mean, I think that's interesting, right? Because even when we look at that, so I have a 14-year-old boy. She has 2 children that are younger, and we are the pillars. And I think about, she started going back to church recently. We're bringing the kids to church, and I feel like that is the role that I feel is expected of me as a mother. Like, if you don't do it, no one will.
And it's so traditional in our community that even when you look at church now, the wife is always at church. The husband, not so much, right? For my church, we just migrated our membership database. And I can't tell you the number of older women who are members, who are married, but their husbands are not.
Yes.
And you're like, okay.
See, you see the member database. I look at these women and then one day their husband shows up. I'm like, you've got a husband? You're married? I thought you were a single Spencer. I knew you had 8 cats.
Or widowed.
Oh, okay. That's another option.
It is. It is. But it's so intrinsically traditional, especially in Black church, that the mom is the one who takes the child everywhere. And the mom is the one who goes to church, and dad comes Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter.
There's not a game on.
Right. Because there's always something. Golf is in right now.
I don't golf.
I mean,
okay.
Oh,
I don't.
He doesn't.
Okay. Okay. What was the look for?
The look was the commentary has started.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's perfect. I love it.
It's great. It's great.
He caught the cue because I looked at him and he said, I don't golf.
I don't golf.
He said, this is my cue.
It's wild how that part of our tradition is still the same. And I think we were talking about this the last time we were together, how what I need from church and what the boys need from church, and not church, lowercase c, like where we go to church, capital C, spirituality is very different. And I'm making decisions based on what they need because I know how to get what I need, right? I know when I need a good word and I know where to go to get it. Yeah. I know when I'm okay with Sarah Jakes Roberts and when I need Warren H. Stewart Sr. I know when I need Sherilyn Curry Lastly to speak a word or Jacqueline Top. Like I know where to go to get what I need. Yeah. They're still figuring it out.
Yes.
And so the decisions that you make as it relates to church are really driven by what they need.
See, that's really important. And okay, we're going to go into a therapy session real quick. So I need some advice personally on not exactly what you just said. So we started going to a new church, namely because I thought my son needed something different, which he did, but it was really me, low key.
See how God works through?
He 100% does.
Yeah.
It's exactly how my mama got brought to Tanner, but that's a whole nother story I've told 8 times on air. So I brought my son and I now go to a new church, and he does not for the life of him want to go to the youth area. So they have a youth area that's 13 and above. So he's 14. So he's at the lower range. So it's older kids, right? It's not like he's with the
Hang
babies.
out with the cool kids.
Because he hates that. Right. I thought he was going to love it. And they do cool things. They play fun games. And like, it seems like a really good thing. Okay. He only wants to go to church with me and sleep in the pew next to me. Well, there's no pews, but there's seats. And sometimes he'll stay awake and stuff. But like, I'm like, no, I'm torn about whether I should force him to go to the youth thing so that he can get things at his level, or whether I allow him to kind of make that choice for himself. And you were talking about the role of the mother and kind of guiding, because, you know, they're still learning what they need to feed their spirits. Like, you just nailed exactly what I'm struggling with right now.
That's hard.
It is.
Right? Because my mom, hi Betty, was like, you will sing in the choir, you will usher, you will do all the things. Yes. And, you know, could send a look from the choir stand back to the back row where I was hanging out.
Not the look.
Right, the look. Or, you know, could pinch you. And you did go to Sunday school, you did go to youth church, all those things. And so while I am eternally grateful for what my parents gave me, especially my mom, when I look at what Jaden and Miles need, I'm learning their level of traditionalism is different. Yeah. Jaden is an intellect. And by that, I mean, I believe he gets more having the debate with him about biblical truth than anywhere else. Because the conversations they have are like, okay, so how did God part the Red Sea, right? We were just talking about this. Mm-hmm. How did this really happen? And Jaden is scientifically, because, you know, STEM matters these days, going, well, clearly it was low tide and there was a lower level where they could cross, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. And you know that the Great Flood was really ice age. And so that debate matters more to him, in my opinion, spiritually, than anything he would ever get sitting anywhere else.
That's a great point.
Right? But it doesn't negate the need for church and for fellowship, for, what's the word? Koinonia fellowship. Thank you, Pastor Stewart.
Koinonia?
Yes.
Isn't that in your eye?
That is a cornea. I'm going to get you. Koinonia fellowship, let me put on my bishop hat, is when you come together with the people and you fellowship. Gosh. That is youth church. Yes. That is Koinonia fellowship, right? That's where you get to kick it with your friends and halfway listen to the lesson. Yeah. That's the fellowship of youth church. But it could be that he needs something different.
So here's the thing is, when I do force him to go, which I did once on Super Bowl Sunday.
Why? Because
they had cool stuff. They had little fingers. I like the fingers.
Is he a sports person?
Yeah, he plays basketball.
Football is Super Bowl Sunday.
He doesn't play the footballs, but but it was like, there was a lot of energy around it. The people were outside greeting the babies.
Did he say he had fun?
So he talked to one person and he didn't know anybody's name.
Jaden.
Yes. First of all, your youngest child sounds like my spirit animal. All those conversations sound great. And my baby is an exact replica of my brain. So I could see where something like that. What you doing on Sunday?
You have to be able to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Which is hard because we're brought up like, no, you're going to Sunday school. You're going to youth church. This is what we do. And this generation is so vastly different that you have to meet them where they are. So like Miles's Bible is a comic book Bible.
Where do I find that?
Baby. Amazon.
Do they have an anime one?
Yes.
Yeah.
His is it is kind of anime.
It's anime.
Oh my gosh.
You got to meet them where they are so that they can see Christ, which I think my mother and father, my dad was like, what? Right?
Yes.
My mom, what? You've got to meet them where they are so that they can get to Christ. Because the goal is to get them
to Christ.
Yeah. So it's whatever it takes.
So that is brilliant. Okay. So I've already built a new business in my head because that's the kind of person that I am.
It's an anime Bible business.
No, not the Bible.
Oh.
But you do anime.
Yes.
We could do a whole anime Bible series for the babies. And then bring the babies. We'll work it out later, but we'll work out the title and stuff. And you can have the majority share, but we're gonna work out this business because you got the talent and all.
You can work out the investors.
I just made a business. I
You
do that.
did.
I'm here for it.
Yes.
It's gonna be the Dojo District.
It'll be like
Bible.
Veggie Tales, but like
But in
Dojo
anime?
District Tales.
Waka.
Jesus Tales.
So
Jesus.
will they all have? So are they going to get their own houses? Like I have a. Anyway,
It's my dojo church.
We've digressed.
We've digressed. But I mean, it kind of, but kind of not. Like,
Right.
you got to make church relatable for the kiddos. And I think that's our role as mothers, right? Is
Yes.
that we know our kids so well. And maybe that's why, and not that fathers don't, but I think there's that emotional intelligence I found that I've had. My ex-husband actually said to me once, he's like, I need you to look after the emotional needs of our family because it's just not my skill. It's not my gift. And not saying that it's not any man's gift, but we gifted.
I need him to balance me when I'm being too emotional.
Yeah.
Right? He'll look at me and be like, simmer down because I'm already in left. So he has it. And this is not to negate, but it balances.
Yeah.
Because I am super emotional about my kids, right? Like as moms, we're like, you are like, they can do no wrong, even when they're doing wrong. But like the balance of it is what I get on this side.
Yeah.
And when it comes to spirituality and what you want for them, because we've already lived the life, right? Like we've already had our struggles. We've already gone through some things. We have a couple chapters in our book.
Yeah.
You don't want them to make the same mistakes. And so you're constantly in this position of prayer and this posture of, okay, God, I can't mess it up. This. And what you come to a place of is you realizing what I needed when I was their age and what he needs at this age is not the same.
Yeah.
And you have to be grounded and rooted enough to realize it's okay if they don't go. He might be falling asleep next to you today because he's tired, because he was playing video games, because that's Miles, right? But what I've learned is he's paying attention.
Yeah.
And when he starts to hear things, he perks up. Like the last time we were all in church together when his dad preached, we were on the second row and Miles was slouching and all the things, and they loved the music, and because we were at a guest church and it was high energy, and Papa started preaching and Miles kind of slumped a little bit, but then he said something and he sat up, and I was like, I'm sorry, are you leaning forward? Are you what is happening?
Yeah.
And it was that he got something, but it was something that in the message that triggered him.
Okay.
That he wouldn't have gotten in youth church because they're doing it at a different level,
Right.
which is not a bad thing because he does need to go to youth church for the fellowship, to talk to people, to break out your comfort zone. But sometimes they do need to be sitting in the sanctuary to hear it through osmosis because they were playing video games the night before.
So maybe it's finding a good balance and knowing my son well enough to know when does he need to go to Dojo Church House
Dojo
Barbie. Oh, we went to Barbie. Isn't that, I don't know, anime. Mojo Dojo Church House.
It's the Mojo Dojo Church House. I want you to build that, please.
Versus when does he need to be in the sanctuary with me and like kind of get a little bit of that traditional kind of grounded real world preaching. And your older son is older than my son. And so I could see where maybe he'd be in a place where he might be able to understand some of the concepts a bit more But the church I'm at now, they really break it down, which is nice. I've noticed him paying attention more. Whereas when we went to, it's like in the wineskin, and it was like, what? In the world?
Yeah.
Why would wine? What? Like he can't even picture what that might possibly be.
It's about making the Bible and making a walk and a life with Christ relevant for them in 2024, right? Because they're exposed to so much. I remember I grew up on all military bases. Both my parents are retired Air Force. And so I didn't have the luxury of living inner city. I was born on a base. We hopped from base to base until they retired when I was in high school. And so my first out of town high school trip was to New Orleans for dance camp. Cool. We're driving, going to Loyola, and I'm looking under the interstate, and I realize there are people living under the interstate. And so we get there, we check in, I call my mom, and I'm like, Mom, there are people who live under the interstate. And she was like, baby, that's homelessness. I said, help me. Because I had never experienced homelessness. I lived on military bases where I could walk anywhere, go anywhere. I had an ID card that got me into everything, and half the stuff I didn't have to pay for.
Yeah.
I didn't have the luxury of inner city because of the naivety of what I was afforded as a military brat. In 2024, Miles is like, give me the water to give to the person on the street because he's been exposed to it so much. And early on when Jaden was younger, that was something he was passionate about. He'd be like, do we have any extra money? And I'd be like, for what? The people on the street. Their level of exposure is just so different than ours that sometimes that real world grounding that comes in adult church, they can relate to because they've seen it. And for many children, they've witnessed it because their homes are not our homes. They are in a foster care system where they are bounced from house to house and where they've got people who support them and people who don't. And so church becomes that refuge.
Yeah.
And so because of what they're exposed to, yes, they need the fellowship in youth church, but sometimes they need the real world response from the senior pastor because they're living it.
Yeah.
I want to kind of piggyback off that. So also on top of that, and my wife does a really good job with this, they have to see how you serve in the ministry. And I'll tell you, on the face of this earth, nobody serves harder than Tracy. Aww. Nobody does.
I'm retired. I don't know what he's talking about.
So Tracy has a spirit of a servant, and she has a heart of a servant. If you know Tracy, she will do everything she can to give you what you need. She'll give you the shirt off her back. She'll stay up till 12, 2 o'clock in the morning to talk to you through stuff. And my kids have seen that their entire lives. And they've seen my wife work in church. She came out of news. I mean, this goes back to the faith thing because she came to Tucson for a news job.
Yeah.
And then when she had kids, she's like, okay, I can't balance this anymore. I need to pivot. So her pivot was, let me go help out at my father's church, Rising Star, and figure it out, this whole career change and stuff. So in that, she's serving. She's serving in the, in the rest of the area. She's serving in the fellowship hall. She's serving in the sound ministry. She's serving in the youth choir. She's serving in the adult choir. She's the choir director. She's the sound person. She's the AV communications person. She's the multimedia person. So she is literally creating a position through faith. There was no pay. There was no pay or anything like that. There was no job guarantee to her. But people saw how hard she was working. And my kids have grown up with that their entire lives, seeing their mom work really, really hard, serving the kingdom. So they have that example set for them at a very early age. And with that servitude and stuff, that servant mindset, I think when it comes to ministry and stuff, that's what kids need to see. They need to see their parents serving in some capacity, whether it's ushering or playing an instrument or helping out. They need to see you doing something. The more they see you do it, the more it clicks to them that, okay, in order for me to feel fulfilled in my life, I need to serve something beyond myself. And I praise God that both of our kids have that. But she's the shining example of that, of a true servant, have a service heart. And I tell you, there's a lot of people that I encounter and stuff, and they're like, man, your wife is incredible. Man, your wife's a boss. Your wife is this, and that and stuff. And I'm like, she's always been that way. This is not something she does for show. This is who she is. And that has been ingrained since the beginning of marriage. And that's what attracted me to her, was I saw how hard she was going. And I'm like, geez, I'm not going hard enough. Let me step my game up real quick. But I just want to kind of piggyback off that.
Yes.
They've seen that servant heart, that servant's mindset from the beginning. and they embraced it. And when it got to a point where she had to pull back and pivot to something else, she had the faith to allow God to move her to, the enemy school, ASU.
Yeah. The enemy school. I love it.
It's okay. But,
bear down.
Bear down.
Jesus. He's right. But I think in that, and thank you, but in that service, there has to be balance, right? You can't be 100% to everyone all the time. And early on, I think I was trying very hard to be 100% to everyone all the time. And as all of us know, ministry comes at a cost.
Yes.
Right? So you can't be and minister to your children at 100% if you are trying to be 100% somewhere else. You have to be able to balance it. And while I am grateful that the boys did get to see service on both levels, because at one point he was a minister of music, right? We were all busy in church. The one thing I will say that we quickly figured out is that life of being 100% in church was not us.
It's not our dynamic anymore.
Right? It quickly was like, oh, we can't do this. And his dad did it, and my dad did. My dad built a whole church. And I reflect on my childhood and how I felt when dad was at Blessed Hope more than he was at my dance competitions.
Yeah.
I always would say he put other people ahead of us, recognizing now he was putting ministry ahead of us.
Yeah.
Ministry costs, and I never wanted to cost my kids. So yes, you serve, and it is a great example, but I don't have to be everywhere. I'm the person that's like, I never want to be the single point of failure. I never want to be the reason why somebody misses Christ in this situation, right? Because I'm running around so much, I don't want to be the distraction that gives you the opportunity to miss seeing Christ. So you have to balance it as best as you can, because ministry costs.
Yeah.
And in family, when you're raising kids, even now, there are moments where they'll catch themselves because they'll be like, oh, those are the keys to the church. You didn't have keys a year ago. Well, I got them back, right? And we laugh because I do have them back because I do part-time work. But I catch myself and I'm like, oh, there are still scars there.
Yeah.
Because ministry costs.
It does.
And I don't want it to cost them their walk with Christ, because that's the ultimate as a mom. My ministry and what I do can't cost them from seeing God.
Yeah.
So if I have to pivot and change so that they can get what they need, I'm going to do that.
And we show them that balance, right? Because even as mothers, we have that tendency to want to give 100% to everyone. Like, I can do it all. I can be everywhere and I can be everything for everyone. Don't worry. I'm okay. I know I'm about to pass out, but don't worry. I can give you my last 10%.
And I'm going to pass out and I'm going to put my laptop on my lap when I'm in the hospital and I'm going to keep working. Those days are gone.
But if we show them that, we're not showing them a realistic, healthy life.
Right.
And so it's important. I'm so glad that you found that balance and were able to exhibit that. And I'm so glad that you had that support. And honestly, that was the question I was going to ask you next in my head. Mm-hmm. As you were talking, I was like, okay, but going into this, what did you expect as the woman of your household? Like, in terms of, what did you expect from her in terms of the faith of your family?
So it's kind of goes back to my childhood too, because like her, I had a similar experience where my dad was a pastor and was in the military at the same time for 14 years. So I almost never saw my dad. And through middle school, through high school, and that's part of the rebellion phase, is I was acting out for attention and stuff and everything of that sort. So, but my mom, she did a really good job of keeping my dad focused on the big picture. It's, hey, does your son know how to tie a tie? Did your son know how to change the tire? You didn't teach him that. He taught himself that. So I was able to kind of glean from that. And I'm like, you know what? For my kids, I'm going to be the complete opposite. And my dad's an amazing dad. He's the best dad on the planet. Yeah. But like she said, ministry comes at a cost. And the cost of that was them building arguably one of the best churches in the nation. And him being a pastor still to this day in a thriving where the community is really affected by what he does. So I can see the bigger picture in that. And I think when it comes to my wife, I was just always had to be the bad guy sometimes. I always had to be the person like, hey, It can't be every night. You can't be in a meeting every night. You can't. You can't be out every single night, because what happens is, and you'll see with your son, they see it. And they're like, Dad, she's gone again. Dad, she's gone again.
And they get older and vocal with it.
Yeah.
Like they don't talk under their breath.
Yeah.
It's so disrespectful.
Yeah.
Like you'll walk in and they'll be like, oh, you're here, little boy. Like the older they get, the more vocal they get.
I just never want my kids for them to be used to mom being gone. That was my only thing. I never want to get in the way of the ministry. I want to support the ministry. We started the ministry almost our entire marriage. We serve in 2 different places now, but I think we do a much better job of making sure that when there are times to engage our kids in our ministry, we engage them at the house.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily drag them to church for them to get the lesson.
Yeah.
It could be a situation where we're just sitting at the TV and stuff, and we go on a YouTube rabbit hole or something on TikTok that's interesting, and we could be like, hey, this is interesting. You guys know about this? So there are opportunities there, but I think for my wife, my only expectation is it can't be every night.
Yeah.
You gotta give yourself a night for yourself and something for your kids.
Like
That's
you
it.
wanted her to be grounded and you wanted her to be a person of faith, but you didn't want it to be something that was all consuming, or to demonstrate to your kids that it has to consume your entire life.
And also, I would be triggered by that, because I was like, this is my dad. At times I was like, this is my dad all over again.
There's nothing like being in an argument, hearing your spouse say, you're acting like my father.
Yeah.
Not even your mother, like the father.
Yeah. And I mean, the beauty is like, we are both, his dad and I are both like Sagittarius. Like there are a couple days between our birthdays, like all the things. And so really, and it was like, oh, and it convicts me, because you're saying I'm acting like my dad, right? Which is also the trigger therapy, and going, oh, I am acting like my dad. And then having to come to terms with realizing what my mom did in those situations, and having to eat crow and call her and be like, listen, you remember that time? It has happened. And I owe you an apology, because I acted like a child. And now I am realizing that now that I'm the mom, that what you were doing was protecting, covering, all those things. Mm-hmm. You will find yourselves more times than not calling your mom and being like, listen, my bad. Betty, my bad.
We may not say the Betty part, because that may not be your mom's name, but so what role did your mom play? I heard protecting.
Oh my God. Listen, both my parents grew up in the church, but my dad did not accept his call into ministry until probably elementary school. So end of elementary school, going into middle school. So I spent younger years, like our house was the party house. He was a DJ when he was in basic training. He was lived his best life. Like at Halloween, our house was the house, right? Nice. All the fun stuff. Dad accepted his call, and all of that changed. Right. And it just stopped. Like it came to a screeching halt, and life just shifted. And I can remember.
I just heard Jesus has entered the chat.
Yes. Ding. And it just changed, because life changed for him. But it didn't change for my sister, and I didn't change for our mom. And for mom, she was the constant reminder that you can still have faith and have fun.
Ooh.
Right? There was...
I like mom. Okay, Betty.
Listen.
Miss Betty. Sorry. Let me throw some respect.
She's a good time.
We call her Betty. When she's cutting up, we call her Betty. But I remember being in middle school, and I had bought a tape, and it was NWA. I am dating myself. And Dad figured it out, and he threw it out of a car window. So I lost my first tape. And then fast forward a couple years, Bone Thugs and Harmony had dropped an album, and I am obsessed with them. Mm-hmm. But it was the Crossroads album. I know. And my mom heard the song, and he was yelling at my sister and I about why we shouldn't be listening to rap, like all the things. Because, he is the pious preacher at this point.
Right.
And she was like, have you ever listened to the lyrics, right, of this one specific song, right? Because we know Bone Thugs and Harmony is quite explicit. There are others, but it was this specific song she was making the point on. And it was, sometimes it's the delivery of the message. My mom is great at managing the delivery of her messages, especially when it came to our faith and how we lived out Christ. She is a very traditional woman. So yes, pantyhose were worn and skirts were below the knee, but she allowed us to experience Christ in our own ways and make mistakes. Now, she might not have agreed with all the crazy mistakes, but I know she prayed her way through them because I was very rebellious in college. But I know that my mom let me make the mistakes. And when I reflect on all of the challenges and all of the things, what I realize is she was the constant fixer, whether it was through prayer or through money being deposited, right? She was the constant. And that's what I've always wanted for the boys. Even when I was busy with ministry, I always wanted to be the constant of, we are going to do this. You are going to have prayer. You know, you have to be the voice of reason when everything is chaotic. And you have to be willing to let your kids fail, which is hard.
Yeah.
Orbit. It's about the orbit.
Okay. I was like, is he not liking the conversation?
No,
and he
that's
wants
his
to
orbit.
no.
Usually it's like this.
Wrap it up. No, I was like,
Orbit.
no.
I got something to say. Talk faster. I didn't know what the signal
Yeah,
was either.
sorry.
I told you, he's over here.
I was trying to do the orbit thing.
Got it.
Like, how do you, anyways, get back into orbit.
Yeah.
And then from there, let them see your orbit. Yeah. Keep yourself in the orbit.
That's nice. Okay, Miss Betty, I see you. I love it.
Listen, she's a G. She's
I'm
in her
in there
soft
like,
life right now. She's a G.
Have you even listened to Burn Thugs and Harmony?
But if you think about it, our parents went through the same thing when Kirk Franklin's first album came out.
Yes.
Right? Like, music is the great equalizer. And in church, Kirk Franklin, for the generation before us, was the great equalizer. Like, he was like, we will stomp.
Yeah.
And people were like, no, we won't.
Was radical.
It was radical, right? You always have to be willing to adjust for what that generation needs to see Christ.
You brought it full circle.
You have to. You have to. Like, you can't, what got me to Christ is not what's going to get my child to Christ.
Yeah.
Because he's living in a different time.
Yeah.
And I have to be willing as a mom to see the time that he's living in, to respect the experiences, right? Miles is a COVID kid. COVID hit in
2020.
Right. So he was definite elementary school. Like
10.
Whew, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times.
Yeah.
And it affected him in such a way that, like, you change your parenting because you're like, oh, you are a COVID kid. This stunted you. Mm-hmm. What I would have done or what my mom would have done to pull me out of it is not what I can do for him.
Yeah.
It's different because the kid is different, but also the times are different. They've experienced different things. They've seen different things. Bullying is very different than it was when I was in high school. Like, seriously, some of you, okay, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my level of bullying was the kid who knocked your lunch tray over in the cafeteria.
Now you got my son, we went to his future school and he was like, I don't want to have it be a 13 Reasons Why moment. And I said, now, wait a minute. We got to talk about this. I'm sorry. What do you think is going to happen? He's worried about like the school having suicides and like things like his worries and concerns being a freshman going into high school
are wild.
Yes.
But so real life for them.
Yes.
Because suicide is so real among young children. When you talk about children who are struggling with identity and and the idea of being gender nonconforming.
Yeah.
Right? All of those things.
And they're talking to parents who don't even understand what that means.
Right.
Pronoun.
Because it's I'm sorry,
what do you mean there's more than two options?
It's LGBTQIA plus and gender. Like, there are parents that can't even wrap their brain. My mom was like, come again.
Yeah. And
it's a different generation. And at the core of what we want, though, is for them to get to Christ.
Yes.
However they get there.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What I'm getting so clear on as we have this conversation, I actually hadn't stopped to reflect on, like, what role did my mom play in my faith journey? And I'm realizing my mom was y'all's dad's. I mean, but she started later. So
we love your mom.
She's fabulous and she's super supportive, but she's definitely, like, even when she wasn't in the church, she's that always gone, always working, which is interesting because for several periods of my life, she was a single mom. And so when she's the only one, there's no one there to counterbalance. It was just, she was working. She was working hard for us, but she was working. And then when she joined the church, she's like, right now, she's not even in the state.
Right.
She's off working hard for the kingdom. and they need her because some of the stuff she has to deal with.
Right.
And like, it's wild. And some of the stuff these churches are struggling with, and they don't know how to encounter these. They don't know how to get over these things that they're encountering.
Right.
And she does. She has the toolkit that God has given her.
Right.
Just for times like these.
Because the church, capital C, right?
Yeah.
So I say church, capital C, when I'm talking about kingdom, all of
Church
that.
collective.
Church collective. Church lowercase c is my local church, right?
Yeah.
Church, capital C, is at a deficit right now.
Yeah.
We as Christians, in my opinion, are at a deficit because we are letting world win in ways that we weren't prepared to fight, even though we might have seen them coming, right? We are letting world win because we sat in the sanctuary on our favorite pew in our favorite dress with our hands raised, worshiping and listening to the preacher instead of being out in the field dealing with the issues in the field.
Yes.
We got so comfortable in our churches that we forgot there's still work to do in the field. And now you have this generation of younger people who are like, but I don't need the church. And we're struggling going, no, you need church, capital C.
Yeah.
And there's relevance in Christ and there's relevance in this life. But for the longest, we was in the walls having a great time.
We're like the CEO who spent too much time at the top and they don't understand the world of the real life frontline workers. And frontline workers are like, you're not even relatable. You don't
Right.
even get my world. You can't make rules and policies for me because you don't get my life.
Right.
And like, that's exactly what's happening with the church right now. You've got the church and the churchy people, not even just the person in the pulpit, who are
Right.
speaking and they're trying to speak to the front line, but they're not speaking their language because they don't get what they're going
Or
through.
they're using it horribly because
Yes.
their reference for pop culture is lean back.
Yes.
Right? Their reference to pop culture
did you
is
listen to my
something
podcast?
for something. No, I didn't. Are we in the same lane?
Yes.
Right. Their pop culture reference is something from 5 years ago when these
Yes.
kids are now somewhere else and they're trying to be relevant, but you've yet to walk out the walls to meet them where they are.
Yes.
And as moms, we're in the church and I'm outside, right? So I gotta meet my kid where he is because I gotta deal with the bully who's acting crazy. And then I gotta deal with the bully parents.
Yes.
Right. And then I gotta not act like a bully. Right.
And you got to put down the grenade.
And I gotta put down my backpack of hand grenades.
Yes.
Because I would throw them.
Yes. Okay. So it's so funny because I had this conversation with my pastor, my AME pastor, and I was like, he has said in a phone conversation, right? So we're not talking about in the pulpit. He said the wineskin reference. And I said, now, wait a minute. Let me stop here. This is what I'm talking about in my podcast. When I tell you unrelatable, you just said wineskin. And he's all like, and what he tried to tell me, and it makes sense to him, right? Is, well, it's your job as the generation in the middle to translate them for them. And I was like, but I don't even really know what that means. I can infer from what you're saying. So I can kind of figure out, okay, it was something that held wine. And then it was funny because someone else slightly older than me, who was a little more grounded in church than me, explained to me what a wineskin was. And like, there was like all of these elements to it that I didn't get about new wine and all that. And I was like, this moment right here is where it is. You're expecting me to be able to translate something you've never taught me either.
Right.
And I can't teach this next generation. We're going to have a divot in the workforce. We're going to have a gap.
We do already.
To that, it's kind of interesting, this conversation. So with the church and everything of this sort, the kids have phones now. You can't lie to these kids anymore. You can't. They're going to, TikTok will tell you in 30 seconds what you just said. And if what you're saying is wrong or BS, is the church's credibility is at all-time low. I think that's the issue, the credibility, because these kids got phones now. And the challenge of us being parents now is we're parenting them away from their phones and we're parenting with our phones. We communicate with our kids through our phones. They do everything through their phones. And that's a whole different challenge that the church was far, like 20 years behind on. Yeah. And like, it wasn't until COVID until churches started doing live streaming. Like a lot of churches were reluctant to do live stream because like, you'll stay home, you won't come to the church.
Oh my gosh.
But God.
COVID, you might not need us.
Yeah.
But I can give online.
Yeah, I can give online. I can worship. But the thing is, like, COVID forced a culture change. Yeah. It forced the culture for us to be more remote. We're more online and stuff. And our kids have been conditioned to that. And the churches they've tried. A lot of churches try. A lot of these mega pastors try with these TikTok dances and all these trending topics and stuff, but they're missing the message. The message is Christ is within.
Yeah.
God is within. God is a consciousness. It's not a sky daddy you just pray to and wish for. And I feel like the black church,
daddy.
I feel like the black church presents God like a genie sometimes, and that he grants wishes. If you pray and you cease and you fast, this will happen. That's not how God typically works. Sometimes God's unanswered prayers are a huge favor for you, because if God answered all our prayers, we will be terrible people.
Yes.
And the kids, our generation beyond us, they need to understand that. It's that God is within. God is a consciousness that you protect. You have to find times, you have to find in your own spiritual journey your time to spend with God. God is everywhere. God is in nature. God is in the people you talk to. God is in the sports that you watch. God is in the reality show that you watch, the Real Housewives. God is everywhere.
Yeah.
And you got to recognize where God is at and then pull from that. And then from there, with your spiritual walk, be the light that God has shined for you. But a lot of us start approaching it that way. We're approaching it like you have to be a part of a club in order to achieve consciousness or righteousness. And that's where the church is falling short.
Yes, and pay at least 10% to said club.
10%.
You know what? But let's be careful about that, because with the 10% thing, sorry, I'm going to go history on you.
This is perfect. I love it.
Oh my God, here we go.
So the reason why this 10% thing, and it wasn't until I think I watched some podcast, but back in the ancient times, with these villages and stuff, you would go to the farm and you would tend to your crop and stuff. And then from there, you bring all your crops home. And for those that didn't have the same type of acres or same type of land or crops that you had, there was a community mindset where, okay, and just in case we have famine, just in case we have things, a flood, or just in case we go to war, we're going to put 10% aside to make sure that everybody is provided for. And that way we can collect. And from there, that'll be the community fund. That'll be the fund that we all monitor. And if people need it, say, somebody's husband dies in the war, they can, the wife, the widow, she doesn't have any skills at that time. She can go to that 10% and provide for the family. That's what tithing was for. But what we've seen with the black churches is that they prostituted it. They got planes and jets now. I saw a crippled dollar fundraising for a jet. I'm like, bro, what? I need a jet. The jet is 20 years old. I need a new jet. That hurts the credibility.
God's the big daddy in the sky. Why he need a jet?
Yeah. And it's, pray to, and it's kind of interesting. I don't want to take this political, but with these politicians, how they're aligning themselves to certain politicians that are clearly not in tune with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Clearly not in tune. That are exploiting their people's, small-mindedness and stuff. So I think our job, this is kind of where mothers come in, because I feel like the mothers are the ultimate arbiters of truth. They're the ultimate arbiters of truth, where a mom will rarely lie to their kids. Even if it hurts their kids, the mom's going to tell the truth. The dad will dance around, because we know how delicate, how abrasive we can be, direct and everything. So that's when having, good mothers and stuff, they have to understand that there is a whole nother world to what you're reading in this Bible. And if you look everywhere, God is everywhere. And you got to understand that if God is everywhere, what energy do you need to pull in order to make yourself a better person? Yeah. And those are the conversations I have with my kids, because my kids don't go to church every Sunday, not anymore. But I come home, I ask my son, what did you read today? Okay, let's talk about it. Let's unpack this. Why is this important? Why is David and Goliath important? Why is David and Jonathan important? So those are things where,
You say David and Jonathan?
Yes.
Who's Jonathan?
See? So it's the story of friendship. It's the ultimate story of friendship, where Jonathan.
Who's Jonathan?
Jonathan is the son of King Saul, and Jonathan saw David, the king. Yeah. Jonathan saw David and gave his armor because he recognized he was anointed. The fact that Jonathan.
That's how he won the Bible thing.
It is. Yeah. How he won the Bible bowl. Yeah.
Jonathan recognized his divinity right there and gave his armor in front of his dad. He gave up his entire kingship to his friend. That's talking about faith in a friend, faith in fire. So there's a whole nother thing.
I see what you're doing here.
Yeah. So there's a whole nother, deeper story to that. But
I didn't recognize that name.
Yes.
I thought he made that up. I thought he was like, he read a secular book next called called David and Jonathan. And I was like, they homies. Okay.
We didn't read deep enough.
I didn't mean to go on the tangent.
No, you good.
We didn't read deep enough.
But I think it brings me back to what you were saying about your mom being a good translator, a good, I hear that that's a bit of our role, is to be able to translate. And I think then part of our role becomes, in order for us to be good translators, we need to make sure we're putting ourselves in a place where we're getting fed in the way that we need.
Right.
So that we can then translate well.
Right.
If we don't know what a wineskin is, we can't tell them.
Right. And that's why I say, I know where to go to get what I need, which is why I'm cool visiting the churches that make them happy.
Yeah.
Right. Because it might be, because I am well past surface level preaching, right? Like I don't need a good hoop. I need a strong word, and I need it to be an encouraging word to get me through to whatever I've got to deal with in Sun Devil country, right? All the things. I know where to get what I need. And so as long as I'm doing what I need to do to get what I need, that's how the Spirit works through us as moms. As long as we're getting what we need. Now, when you get deficient, right? Like it's no different than when you starve yourself and you're nutrient deficient. You get tired, you get sluggish, you're off your A game because you're like, whew, right? You're dizzy. You're kind of not in your right place. When we as mothers aren't getting what we need spiritually, that's when things start falling through cracks.
Yeah.
Right? You have to know you well enough to help shepherd the people that you gave birth to.
Yes.
Which is crazy bananas because you're like, oh, I'm responsible for this little person.
Yes.
And it's not even I'm responsible for them until they're 18. I'm responsible for them for the duration.
Keeps going.
It just, it doesn't.
Energizer Bunny style.
Right. Until one of us is across the street from Jesus. Like you just.
Not across the street.
You're there.
Yeah.
I call my mom more times now than ever. I called my dad before he passed away more times than ever. And I think part of it is because I'm on this side of my relationships with them, and especially with my dad, where I could understand the struggles of building a church, ministry, and all that. And it was like, no, Dad, this is like, we just need to have a conversation, right? Like all the things, because that's what I needed from him. And now even with my mom, even though I do feel like I'm parenting the parent, you know how the kid, I feel like I'm in that phase, but not really. Like she's fine, but still parenting the parent. Cause I'm like, no, Betty, you can't go to Jamaica with your friends. You can't. But you find yourself more times than not leaning into your parental relationships when you know that they were just doing the best they could with what they had.
Yeah. Okay. So as we head into Mother's Day, if there's a mom out there who's trying to balance her life and figure out, what role do I serve in my kiddos' life as it comes to their faith and encouraging their faith and helping them see Christ, what word would you drop into her spirit, that mother out there?
Persevere.
Yes.
Right? I'm fortunate that my kids are not raising hell somewhere, and I don't take that for granted. They have their moments? Yes. Like tantrums do happen. But for the mom who just feels lost, right? My word, and even for myself sometimes, it's just you persevere through it. You pray through it because you will get to the other side. Just like our rebellious phases, I came out on the other side. And now my mom and I sit back and she's like, girl, you cost me, da, da, da. And I'm like, yeah, I did. But look at me now, right? Mom, listen, dismissed from a university, but look at me now.
I'm a
Working
big
for
kid
an
now.
enemy.
Listen, all the things. I'm a big kid. You persevere.
Yeah.
Like the prayers that your parents put up when you were younger, like you're literally doing the same thing. You are persevering through whatever the storm is. And whether your child is the A+ student or the student that's struggling, or even if you have a special needs child, the word is persevere, because as a mom, you want the best for your kid. You want your kid to live the fullest life they possibly can. You want your kid to understand what it's like to walk with Christ and to see the beauty of all that living a Christ-like life has, but it requires you to persevere through it, because baby, tantrums come.
I feel like tantrums happen, when you said earlier, should be on a t-shirt.
Yes.
Like, ooh.
I have a shirt that says just breathe. I don't know where it came from, but like I wear it when I'm traveling through an airport. And so people are always like, thank you. I'm like,
needed that.
I just needed that. For me, the word is persevere.
Okay. What would you drop into someone's spirit?
For fathers and men co-parenting, just try to make the mother's job as easy as possible, because the only thing stronger than friendship is motherhood.
I like your word.
The only thing stronger than friendship is motherhood.
It's not wrong.
Yes. It's the tremendous sacrifice moms have to make in order to be their kids' entire world. And as I'm sure there's men that's going to listen to this podcast and stuff, I think my only goal was to make her job as easy as possible, especially with boys, because I can meet them on their level where I can say a couple things and I'm like, oh, I get it. Okay. And if so, I would encourage the men just to help. If you're in a co-parenting situation, if you're not taking care of your kids, or if you're in a situation where you're struggling to have schedules online, schedules online, things of that sort, understand that there's nothing stronger than motherhood.
Yeah.
And the more you pour into it in terms of making sure your partner is able to be a good mother, because the thing is, you can't turn motherhood off. You can't. Nope. There's no off button for this.
Right.
Not even if you're sick.
Even if you're asleep.
Because they'll come and stand over you when you're asleep, and you'll be like, "Oh, there's somebody breathing on me."
Oh, see, I dipped that in the butt early, and the rule was, if you wake me up, I'm gonna put you to work, and you have chores to do. But if you let me sleep, you can go watch TV or do whatever you want to do until
I feel
learn
like
real fast. Yeah, my kid's smart.
So I was just encouraging men, if you have a mother, if you have kids and stuff, understand the sacrifices that moms actually make. And try to complement that. Don't take over. Don't feel like you have all the answers, because you don't. As a father, you don't. There are times where I don't have the answers for my kids, and I got to be like, this is a mom thing. This is something I can't. Nature versus nurture. I would say she's more nurture. I'm more nature. There's a balance in that. So that would be my advice, is just trying to make their jobs as easy as possible. And that's when the true reward comes in, because now we have two amazing young men that blow me away in terms of just their intellect, their social status. They have such a divine light with both of them, and they're going to do great things. They're going to go beyond what me and her are doing, and that's my only wish as a father. Go beyond what we've done.
That's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And as you're speaking, I think the word that comes to mind for me is grace. And it's funny because when I originally said word, I didn't think I meant a literal word, and then it just was like yelling in my spirit. Is like, we have to give ourselves grace.
Listen,
we are so hard on ourselves as mothers to be perfect, to be everything that everyone needs, especially our kids, all the time. And so give yourself grace and space not to be perfect, and maybe to get some things wrong. Maybe you shouldn't have forced him to go to youth camp, and you should have maybe let him go into the adult one. But, you don't need to be perfect for him to turn out okay. Right. God's got a plan, and he's working it. And he's going to use your imperfection to see the plan out. It's not going to get in the way of the plan.
And there's no book to this.
Nope. Well, the Bible is supposed to be a book, but it was written in code.
Well, what's that book that you get when you're pregnant? The Mom's Guide to Pregnancy.
Yes.
There's a book, but that when you're expecting, that didn't help me at all with any. It's a whole book, but there is no book, truthfully, because one day your child is going to come home, and you're going to be like, "I'm sorry, what?" And then you're going to get past it.
Mom, I got a tattoo on my what?
And then the next day, they're going to come home, and you're going to be like, "I'm sorry. What happened again?" There's no book. You figure it out, and you pray very hard, and you make the best decisions you can for where your kids are. And if the goal is to get them to Christ, you have to give yourself the grace, because you too are growing.
Yeah.
Right? We're all growing. And it starts with you saying, today, it's just going to be like this. It's okay. Because in the imperfection, there is actually perfection.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's where we leave this conversation, because that's perfect. Like, that was the bow that we just tied on the top of this gift.
Oh,
I think so. Thank you guys.
It's Mother's Day.
It is.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much for this conversation and the insights that we got out of it. And thank you for the therapy session. I now have some new things that
Give
I
yourself
can do.
some grace with the church. Let him be where he wants to be.
I'll let him be where he wants to be.
Yeah, but then force him every now and then.
Yeah. Because I'd rather have him next to me at church anyways, because it's awkward to walk in by myself, because I'm also not social like that. But
yeah, force yourselves out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
Koinonia fellowships, big church
and it's
word.
on your eye. I got it. I got it. I'm here. I appreciate you, Tracy. Well, thank you. And thank thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you being a part of the conversation, and hopefully you got a nugget. And if you're a mom out there, hopefully you got those words: perseverance, grace. And if you're out there supporting a mom, be the rock and help them out. They're going through a lot. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe so that you can see more here on Faith and Fire.